But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. This is the London International Animation Festival's 2022, and this is the industry panel, Keeping It Real. And this is about developing your own style. How do you develop and keep your style and passion for animation when you become commercial and do what you love for a living? Are clients always wanting you to repeat your last great work? How do you keep your style fresh and come up with surprising new imagery? We asked a range of animators to join us who are working in pop promos and shorts, who have developed their own look, their own unique look and processes to tell us how they balance the commercial imperative with time for experimentation, play and research, and still keep sane. So we have with us today Tony Comley, Chris Ullens, Balázs Simon, and let me just introduce them. So Tony Comley directs animation from locations in Crystal Palace, and so he says, Bali. He graduated from the Royal College of Art and has many exciting works created with Google, the BBC and Netflix. He does art when he can and is the face of a door manufacturer in northeast China called Sibling Wood. And we welcome any door manufacturers from China on this call. Thank you very much. And have your questions ready. Chris Ullens is a Belgian director who lives and works in London. After graduating in Brussels, Chris completed his master's degree at London's Central St Martin's with distinction. He then worked as a stop-motion animator. A few years on, he transitioned to directing on high-end commercials, and his music videos are known for their bold, creative and playful character, which have earned him multiple awards in festivals across the globe. Chris continues to experiment with his multidisciplinary skills in order to find fresh, weird, and exciting projects. Balázs Simon has a great body of work which speaks the language of cinema with a deep understanding of how to create a feeling through filmcraft, both in camera and in digital visual effects. He's received global recognition for several music videos over the years, ranging from nominations at South by Southwest and the UK MVAs for his music video Light of Day for electronic powerhouse Odessa. He also recently won Best Visual Effects at AICP and Best Animation at the Young British Arrows for the Blink Inc. produced BBC Sport Extreme by Nature Winter Olympics intro. He has also dipped his toes into live action with directing a video of David Guetta's new music video, Save My Life. So great to have you all here. Thank you very much. We're going to start off with presentations, and just so the audience knows, we'll be taking questions as well. So if you have any questions anytime, just pop them into the chat and we'll receive them this end. But we've certainly got lots to talk about. So Tony, let's hear from yourself.
Right, so hello everybody. So the subject of this is how to make art and money at the same time, essentially, from as far as I can tell. And I made a conscious decision at a certain point in my career to completely and utterly separate the two things, but still very much work in animation. Because so the backstory is I went to the Royal College of Art, which is a very artistic course. It's not a commercially focused course at all. You don't actually particularly even learn how to animate at the Royal College of Art, the animation course. It's all about self-expression and making a film that conveys something in a unique way that you want to convey. So it's not at the time, I don't know what it's like now, but at the time there was very little focus on the industry. But so I graduated from there with a very much an artistic sort of mindset. But of course I needed to make money. And it took me a while, but eventually I was, my graduation film there was noticed by Channel 4. And they asked me to direct the animated segments of a documentary about the Cray twins, which were East End gangsters in London in the 60s. One of them in particular, the documentary is about one of them in particular who had a bit of a, I don't know if there's a sort of watershed on this. I want to sort of use some iffy words, but one of them, he liked to lie underneath tables while underage red boys pooed on them. So, so we had to make a documentary involving that, and it was just after he died, so so that we weren't afraid of getting killed. So that began a string of documentaries where I would direct the animated portions and of an otherwise live action documentary, and the focus for me at the time was to sate that creative urge, whilst at the same time making money. And fairly quickly, I came up against what I think are quite typical obstacles with in the industry, and in any industry probably, but which is where the higher up the hierarchy you go, the less creative the person is. So the people holding the money, the people providing the money, understandably want creative say in what's happening at the ground level, but usually those people are not creative. So very often you find yourself in a sticky situation where you're being basically told to make changes that are not good, creatively speaking, so that happened, and I thought, okay, this is just part of it, and it just kept going and going and going and going, and eventually I realized I need to make a choice between do I sort of continue trying to push through, or do I just completely separate the two? And a few things a few different events were the catalyst for me deciding to just separate my creative output from my money work. One of them was that we did a documentary. This one I think was for Channel 4. It was called Britain's African Emperor, and it was about a guy called Septimius Severus, who was the Roman emperor in AD 96. And he's known as the Black Emperor of Rome because he was Libyan, and he was black, and he was the leader of Rome at the time. And so Channel 4 cast a white guy in the role, and it was supposed to be rotoscoped. So I was sort of rotoscoping a white guy, and they wouldn't cast anybody else. They were like, this is our guy. And then the commissioner changed at Channel 4, and the new commissioner, her exact words were, "We want this to be less animation-y." She wants the animation to be less animation-y. And so we kept sending her versions where the live action sort of bled through slightly for the rotoscoping. And eventually somebody, not me, sent her just the live action, and she said, "Great, yes, that's exactly what we're after." So we ended up having to make a live action sequences depicting the invasion of Scotland, the Roman invasion of Scotland, on a fraction of the catering budget of what you would need to actually film that in live action. And then to make it worse, the lead actor, they still didn't change the lead actor. So we were being asked to basically black up the lead actor. So it was this really dodgy, awful situation. And so the moment I decided to take my name off it was, we were in the shoot, and the lead actor, bless him, lovely guy, but he was method acting. And he was a Roman emperor in between takes. And so everybody had to clear the room, and he would sort of announce it. And we were like, okay. And the script got rewritten at one point, and I came back in the room, and there was a new bit of script, and it was this, and he performed this with absolute sincerity and seriousness, and I'll do an impression of it. And this was the moment where I decided I can't have anything to do with this project. So he buried his face in his hands like this. He goes, "I had a dream that I was suckling on the udders of a wolf." Now, that was in reference to the founding myth of Rome, of Romulus and Remus, the founders of Rome, are supposed to have been raised by wolves. And so this emperor is supposed to be having a vision of being raised by wolves. But the phrase that it was rewritten to was, "I had a dream that I was suckling on the udders of a wolf." And then I've got a recording of this, which I can't release because I haven't got the actor's permission, but someone comes down from research, and they said, "Gary, Caroline from research makes a really interesting point. Wolves don't have udders." And he said, no, they don't. And so he's saying, instead of saying udders, can you say teats? And he's like, yes. So he practices it for a bit. He goes, "Suckling at or on the teats?" So that was the moment where I was like, I'm out. I'm not having anything to do with this anymore. but I kind of soldiered on and through another documentary. I'm very conscious of sounding, I don't want to sound kind of bitter and jaded, because it's not that. It's just the harsh reality of the situation is that the people who provide the money want say, and usually, or not always, but often want say in the final product. And for me personally, I found it almost offensive because you're being brought on and you're tasked with creating something that really has your stamp on it and has your name across it, and the whole thing is supposed to be your brand of animation is on this, and that's why you're hired. But very often it gets kind of contorted and bent out of shape by the various producers and marketing managers and stuff, and so by the time it's actually delivered, it's often compromised to a point where I felt like I didn't want to sort of put my name to it anymore. And it's not as financially lucrative. That's the other thing. Because I thought at first, being a director would pay well, and on paper, technically speaking, it pays better than if you're just doing animation. But in practice, if you look at the amount of hours you put in and the late nights and the weekends and all that kind of stuff, it's actually you're going to make more money doing animation, because this is sounding awful. I don't want to start this whole panel off with this very jaded, cynical thing. But here's a fact about at least in animation in the UK, which is that the day rate that you can, because by the way, all this is freelance that I'm talking about. The day rate that you can charge depends not on the skill level of what you're doing, but on the software that you're using. Now, obviously, there are exceptions to that, of course, but generally speaking, that's the rule. So you get this slightly balmy situation where character animation, it usually is people charge less than for motion graphics. So character animation obviously is more complicated and usually more highly skilled. But because you're using Flash or animators, it's called now, or Toon Boom or TV Paint or something, you can't charge as much, generally speaking. Whereas if you use After Effects, that's perceived to be a more sort of high-end, complex piece of software, and so you charge more. So I decided I'm going to do After Effects motion graphics for money, and it's completely and totally feasible. And then I'm going to make art, whatever I want, on my own time. And I'm going to use the money from the motion graphics work to pay for time off to do my own stuff. And I've ended up being more prolific that way than when I was trying to fit my artistic work into a commercial setting. So, the documentaries were the closest I got, but they still weren't quite, enough. But since doing this, since separating them, I've done various projects. Maybe I can share my screen to give you an example, so people know what the hell I'm talking about. Okay, so this is my site. This is I won't play them all because we don't have time, but I'll just quickly go through them. This is a music video that I did, which just recently screened yesterday at LIAF. I can sort of skip through it. This was an interesting one. This was slightly commercial because it was paid, but this was another music video, a collaboration between the Ear, Nose and Throat Clinic and a grime artist called Screwfizzer. I'll skip forward a bit.
Ever passionate. Told her when you breathe and deliver your tone. Give me a minute to devour the flow. Let me jump on a rhythm with a powerful quote. But more to the point, I'm a sound. Traveling like a bang of a magnum banging. You could imagine the feeling of never having it, blowing forever passionate. But does it really matter when things get on top and you lose or can't do things that you want to feel? You can't move. Came out the womb, you can like kung fu with a mind sharper than hardcore. Your art tool. Take note if you find it hard to communicate to what you would say. You turn an unbeliever like an atheist.
Now you gotta press play to this, play, pause and rewind. You can't press all three at the same time.
I can.
You can.
Don't waste your time, better leave it to me before.
And then more recently, I don't have it on my site yet, but I did a collaboration with the with a group called Anagram. We did this project for the Imperial War Museum, which was an installation which took the form of a satirical immigration booth from the future, which imagined a future in which Brexit had taken its natural course and Britain was a third world country. And we had, so the idea was that you go into this booth, you sit and you look in front of a two-way mirror, and behind the mirror is a computer interface which can read your emotions. And that actually was real. We had because Apple software these days can actually recognize with some degree of accuracy how genuine your facial expressions are. So if you smile, you can tell whether it's a real smile or a fake one. So we had this software set up, and I designed and animated the interface that would communicate all the information to you and would make an assessment about where in the world you're allowed to emigrate to. So that was great. That was called A Face to Open Doors. Other projects, while we're here, I'll show you this is the documentaries that I was talking about. Most of them are rotoscoped, and I'm quite proud of a lot of it, but as I say, it was kind of compromised creatively. But here's the documentary show reel.
People are strange when you're a stranger. Faces look ugly when you're alone. Some men seem wicked when you're unwanted. Streets are uneven when you are down. When you're strange, when you're strange, when you're strange. When you're a stranger, faces look ugly, people are strange.
So that's that. So I'll end it because I'm aware that other people are presenting. So I'll end on a positive note, which is that this really does work, this approach, at least for me. I now support, since doing that, I've started a family. So you heard it here first, you can support a family of 4 on freelance motion graphics work and make art on the side and express yourself creatively. It does work. Depending, of course, on the scale of the artistic projects you want to do, because of course that it limits the scale of the artistic projects, because there's not usually a huge amount of money for them. So, but we'll see. But yeah, so that's me. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Tony. And very interesting story they told, because it sounds like at a certain point you made that conscious decision that you were to split the art from the commerce. Obviously, you're still creating artistic stuff, but for commercial reasons, and you went down the sort of the more motion graphics route. That's and you made that sort of decision based on commerce to change your style in a way, because you had a certain roto documentary style, and that sort of moved on. So that's a really interesting story. We'll no doubt return to this, but let's now ask Chris Ullens to give a presentation about his work.
All right. Hello, everyone. So yeah, I'm Chris Ullens. I was to start with a graphic designer and a photographer, and I came to London to study photography, and I ended up having a presentation between my first and my second year. We were done with the first year's teaching, and the tutor said, "Oh, since we've got 2 weeks left, why not do a stop motion animation Oh yeah, by the way, I just wanted to specify that Tony was, I think, speaking of 2D and 2D animation, computer-based animation. I'm in stop motion, just to make that difference. And so, yeah, we did a stop motion workshop in between the first and the second year. And the tutor had a friend, Chris Cairns, who's also a director. And he came to present his work, just to show us what kind of stuff you can do with stop motion. And that was my eureka moment. I was like, oh my God, you can, you know, be paid to make such work. I have to pursue this at all cost. And I knew this same director, Chris Cairns, was coming back to see our results after 2 weeks during the workshop. And so I barely slept for those 2 weeks. I really wanted to impress him. I did everything I could, and it worked. At the end of the presentation that night, he came to see me and said, oh, that's quite fun stuff that you've done. It's totally the sort of tests we like to do. And I was like, I was thinking of working in pubs between the first and the second year for my summer, but instead, if I can do anything on one of your shoots, please hire me. He got me on as a runner, who's the little hand sort of help during shoots, running errands and bringing coffees and all that. So he got me as a runner for his next shoot and told me there's this 5-second clip of that commercial. Why don't you try and do a test for it? And if I like it, then you can shoot it for the commercial. The test was successful. I did it for the commercial. And 2 weeks later, he employed me as a stop motion animator on his next job. And lucky me, he also had lots of friends that were all directors too. Stop motion was quite big around 2005, 2007 when I started. And so they, through word of mouth, they all started employing me as their stop motion animator. And so there I was suddenly during my master's in photography, already starting to work in stop motion with guys that were all my age. We all became friends. It was late nights, getting drunk, making stop motion and getting paid for it. I mean, for a 25-year-old guy, what best is there? So instead of going back to Belgium, like the plan was, I stayed in London. And here I am still 17 years later. And like, sort of, I've gone through a whirlwind of things. I started as a stop motion animator for other directors for 5 years. And then eventually the opportunity arose for me to direct an advert. And suddenly it's once I've got my show reel after 5 years as a stop motion animator that I started presenting that to different companies. And one company said, yeah, okay, like we quite like the stuff you make for other directors. Why don't you have a go at one of those miniature budget music videos? And I did, and that was lots of fun. It took me 2 months because I was completely on my own in a dark basement, just coming up with whatever silly things that I wanted to come up with. It was great. And in parallel, I kept on doing stop motion animation for other directors. That was my sort of way of earning a living. And then next to that, I was doing those smaller budget music videos. But then one thing led to another, and that production company had good agents. And so they started getting commercial work in. And there indeed, I had the sort of a similar realization that the more money and the more sort of the bigger the project, the more people are going to get involved. And indeed, then you have like, I don't know, maybe 20 people above you that all have opinions about what your job should be. So whenever you start the job, as the director, at least whenever I was pitching on stuff, I was like, wow, and we're going to do this because we've got so much budget. It's going to be amazing. We're going to do this and that and like explosions and fireworks and whatever you name it. But I was always going mad with the creativity. And then eventually, two months later, once you've shot everything and it's filtered through the opinion of the 20 people above you, yes, it's true. Often it's a lot less exciting, but there is the reality of it needing to be a product that sells or whatever. And so you're not allowed, I mean, the grass needs to be that color. You're not allowed to have that kind of stuff in the background. And then suddenly it's a lot safer and a bit more boring than what you wanted to make it. But then sometimes you also get the projects where the client's like, oh my God, yes, let's go mad with this. I've had all sorts. I can maybe, I've sort of gone through to a moment where I felt like sharing and showing some stuff. So maybe I can do that at the same time. So I am gonna share my screen. So here we are. This is the kind of stuff that is more sort of money-led, and the kind of stuff where I sort of accept that, you know, it's going to get filtered by 20 people and it's going to end up a lot more sort of dull than what I would have want to make it. But
Savings available in snoozy, fluffy and bright. The Dunelm sale up to 50% off.
There we go. If it wasn't to illustrate my point, I wouldn't have shown this because I don't think it's my best work, but it does illustrate the point that every once in a while you make stuff that you might not be as happy with, but you sort of accept it because it's the game you play. But then there's other stuff, other instances, at least for me, where this one, I went completely mad. The client came to me saying, oh, we need this thing in CG. And I was like, oh, no, we should make it all for real. This will be amazing. Let's make it for real. And let's have it like Chinese puppetry with like lots of, and theater with lots of layers. And we're going to do it all in camera. And then because the hero of the thing is a hand and you can't hide the body that's attached to the hand, you know, anywhere in the set. So we're going to hang the guy on top of the set. I mean, mad. And the client would, yes, let's do it. Leading to so many sleepless nights and me freaking out. Maybe that is why I don't have hair anymore. I don't know. But literally, we got into the studio and I was like, oh my God, is this actually going to work? There's lots of money involved, lots of people. And I did promise everyone it was going to work. And it did. And we made this.
At Kirin Ichiban, we go by a Japanese principle called Geido. It means the way. It means the journey itself is as important as the destination. To appreciate the path you take is essential to appreciating where you go. That's why we care so much about the way we make our beer. There's beauty in the process. We source the best ingredients, and with Kirin's first press brewing process, our beer is always pure. Kirin Ichiban, the world's only first press beer.
There we go. I was very happy with that. It was quite fun. And I just thought that actually I should maybe quickly just show what I was talking about. Where is our... There we go. The little guy above is actually hanging above the set, so we could shoot him about 20-30 minutes at a time, because I tried the rig. It was horrendous. I don't know how he's managed to act so well in there. It was really, really harsh, but so much fun. And yeah, quite a big team. And there you can see all the principle with all the sort of layers like we did it. That is one of the instances where I've managed to do something I was quite happy with for a big budget, and where suddenly all the stars aligned, and that was great. Now, I think it's a bit of a roller coaster ride, at least for me as a freelancer. There will be times where suddenly for a month there's not much happening, and then I'm in my studio here and I do sort of tests in the hope that suddenly something is going to come at some point. I've got different companies and agents representing me. I never really know. Sometimes it's people that are going to come back off the back of another job, and suddenly they come back to me and they're like, oh, we've got this second song we'd like you to have a look at because we like working with you. Like it's a bit of an unknown. It's true, it's not. Sometimes I wish maybe I had something on the side like Tony that is sort of more stable, because I do feel it's always a bit, you know, unstable and unsure and, you know, ups and downs and stuff like that. But I tend to have so much fun making what I make that, you know, sometimes I also make it work in a way where I will take on smaller music videos, but because I make them here on my own in my basement, the small budget of that music video, I get to keep almost all of it. It's just my time and my skills that are put into it. But then when the budgets are bigger, then that allows me to employ more people and make it bigger. So depending on the project, like right now, I'm about to make a really small budget music video, and that'll probably be done here. But there is chat of a bigger one coming next month. And so I'll just try and make it work that way. Like this is, for example, something that was already much smaller. We had lots of fun making that. So that was, although it's Vice and Huawei, where you think, oh my God, a phone company is going to be lots of money, which I thought when they approached me. They were actually, no, it's for Vice Magazine Italy. It's like quite small budget. And so I went to see my art director and my DOP, and I said, guys, like, look, it's not a big budget, but that would allow the four of us to lock ourselves up in a studio and play with that budget to make something fun. Are you up for it? We all, you know, around the pine said, yes, let's do it. And we did it. And that's it. We locked ourselves up for 2 weeks and, you know, we're allowed to make this fun. We didn't earn a lot of money doing it. But then there's other moments where this in the background, that's something that I did as a stop motion animator. That is for Gucci, is really well paid, and then suddenly I get to have, because although I'm only an animator, I'm allowed lots of freedom by the director here, because he knows I am an animator too, director too, and so I'm allowed to sort of do whatever I want, almost under his supervision and control. But this is lots of fun, and I get well paid because it's Gucci and stuff.
Buondì, amore mio, buondì, c'è tanto sole nel mio cuore, il mondo è bello ancora. Buondì, oh mia felicità, ti voglio dire.
There we go. So yeah, lots of fun. But that is actually, this film is my animators re-edit. The final thing was very different because it was part of a bigger campaign, and there were this was specifically my set that I animated and shot, and so I did an animator's re-edit on a track I love. It's kind of my a happy Sunday morning track for me. Yeah, I don't know how much time I've got left or not.
Well, let's just, if it's okay with you, we'll leave there, because we just want to have room for questions. And
of course,
that was great. And I think one of the strong things that came out, which I'm sure we'll come back to in the questions, is the unpredictability of the freelance life and sort of, you know, how you can plan ahead when you don't know what's around the corner. But I really like that idea that you know, some projects are money-led projects where you just have to accept that you're going to compromise. Then there are other projects where, you know, you can get around with your mates and do something which you're in control of. But now I'll ask Balázs to sort of give his presentation now, if he may, and then we'll get round to some questions. And just a reminder, do put your questions in the chat. We've got one from Ebba, which we'll get round to. And so do put them in the chat. And Balázs, over to you.
Thanks a lot. Hello, everyone, and thanks a lot for having me. My name is Balázs, and I'm a London-based director at the moment. It will be a bit hard for me to present you such a comprehensive overview of a career in the UK, because I haven't been here for so long. I moved to the UK just before Brexit happened, and like 4 days before the lockdown. So I was locked in a room for half a year, trying to figure out what I'm about to do with my life. And fortunately for me, I was approached by Blinking, which is, if you don't know, a really good animation company. It's part of the Blink family, and they do all sorts of mixed media and experimentation, which I think suited what I do quite well. But to be honest, actually when they approached me, I told them that, is it a problem that I don't really like doing animation? And they were like, don't worry about that, we'll figure it out. So to go back to that thought, I started learning animation in Budapest in Hungary, where I'm coming from. And actually, I realized that it's really not for me as I thought before, because it just takes a lot of time to create something, and I'm not actually good at drawing. So it was a psychological difficulty, and it was a physical difficulty as well. And ever since, I've been feeling like I'm course correcting, which is obviously not true. I obviously love doing all sorts of things, but that really felt weird, like going into it and not actually. During the process, I realized I really wanted to do more live action, or I really wanted to get that unpredictability you get when you are on a live set. You're just not in total control. You can't really do anything by yourself. And well, at first, animation seems like a really exciting thing. Like you are the master of your whole world. Sometimes that can fire back. So let me share my screen, because I have a couple of images to show you about this. So that is why it would be hard to tell what kind of animation I'm doing. A lot of it is CG, I guess, but I've been mixing it up ever since, because I just don't like doing the same thing over and over again. Especially, I can't create two drawings that follow each other. I just I get bored doing that. So I needed to find ways to mix it up, to add some unpredictability to the things. And when you are on a live set, you can hit by rain, for example, which we got on this shoot, and you have to work that rain into your concept, because if it's a music video, for example, you just don't have the money or time to go back another shoot day, and you have to build that into your concept. And I was looking for similar ways to approach animation, and that is why I started like shooting a live action camera on an empty street, and then using that camera motion in the animation. And it adds a certain bit of liveliness, I guess, to the scene. Or I started trying out different techniques and experimentation with, for example, here I'm trying to imitate a swirly bokeh effect by actually spinning every frame in CG and getting the motion vector data of that spin and combining that data with the depth data, which creates this swirly type of depth of field effect, and you know, all sorts of lens effects and motion capture and programming and whatnot. So in this example, for example, here I scanned our living spaces with a friend, and we reused those scans, like, you know, however broken they came out to be, we used those as environments for this music video. Or on this example, I actually created the flower by the puppet pin tool in After Effects, hand drawing the motion in real time, and just taking many instances and unfolding them and combining those. Or on this example, I hand drew one linear motion of a rock, and that added that sort of, you know, natural, unpredictable rolling motion, and then that animation was replicated for all the rocks, and I only had to define like a point they are attracted to, and it's just calculated by vectors. So they keep the original motion, but they can be rearranged or oriented in many ways. So that's what I'm trying to tell, and I'm not saying it's been easy. I don't have to support a family yet, so maybe that's something that makes it a bit easier. But a lot of times I'm just not going into projects where I can't do my experiments, and as you've seen, it's a bit difficult to point out, pin down what the style is exactly. So I'm and with the producers at Blinking, we are trying to talk a lot to potential clients and trying to sell the idea of experimentation and this approach, because it's really hard to show beforehand what the outcome would be. This example we are looking at is the Winter Olympics intro for BBC, and here we created a 3D scan of a 3D print of each frame, and that's what we shot. Or lately, for my music video for Odessa, I tried to figure out how to create this painterly effect, which you know, procedurally repainted every frame for us, and it's something you can't show beforehand. It's hard to like create a key visual before actually creating all the the technique, the technology behind these projects. So I think in that sense, my experiences differ, for example, from Tony, because I'm still trying to sell what I do as a director to clients. And I can tell you a lot of times it's just not working out. So a lot of times they are just not buying into it, or they get stressed during the process, because it's really hard to show where things are progressing. And yeah, it's not as lucrative as you might think, because it just needs a lot of work. So yeah, I'm always thinking about you know, helping out people, doing some animation for other work, other people's work, to just get some money into the bank. But so far it's been manageable. So let's take a look. I think I didn't press a certain button when I started sharing. No, it's working. So let's take a look at the Winter Olympics, for example, which I think is quite a successful sell of a technique or an idea.
into games, extreme by nature.
So I'm especially happy about how the snow parts turned out, and that was the main point, not rendering this in 3D. It needed a lot of pre-calculated things. It's a replacement animation, and we actually had the camera programmed in a CG world. We had obviously all the prints created in a CG world, and I really liked the nature of the 3D prints and how translucent they get. They really look quite close to snow, and so I really want to show you an image of what the brief was. I'm not sure if this is if I can show this, but it's too late. So this is the original brief I got for this from the BBC Creative. They first were thinking about Han Dynasty art or some contemporary Chinese woodblock print, and one thing is it's not too close to what I'm doing. The other thing was we had like 3 months to create the spot, and these are just too intricate and too difficult to pinpoint and produce in such a short time, and it wasn't a big budget intro. So I had to come up with something else to present them that we thought would work, but still get us to an interesting level. So I'm showing this to really show how different the end result can be from a brief. And I think this is a really important thing. If let's say you get a brief from somebody, you might run into a situation where when they're asking something from you that it's not really your style, or it's not really meshing well with what you do, well, most of the time they invite like 3 different companies or people to pitch, around 3 people. And my experience is that they are actually looking for something that's original or recognizable. So if you feel that it's not really what you would do, at least at this point in my career, I try to say, I try to like rebrief or give them an idea I think could work well with my skills, and try not to compromise and just ask what I was told. And if they are not happy with that, then we are not meant for each other. And it's been quite difficult to get jobs that way, but hopefully whatever I manage to win as a project, I can create it in a way I think works well with what I do. So basically, that's what I wanted to share with you.
Thank you very much, Balázs. That's great. And a lot of common themes are coming up. We've got about a quarter of an hour of questions. So I'm going to start off with one, and that is, you mentioned pitching there. How much do you guys have to sort of pitch yourselves almost like as a brand to people? Because you want people to sort of like go, stop motion. Let's call in Chris Ullens, because that's what he does. Sort of CGI and physical, let's call in Balázs. Do you sort of think of yourselves as brands and have to sell yourself as a kind of brand against other competitors? Do you think like that, or are you just like, oh, I'll just pitch for anything?
With 2D, I found that it's important to have, or that it's usually important to have a visual style that's fairly consistent. But it can also become a bit of a problem, because that style will go in and out of fashion, so there are people who have a current style, but then they'll stop getting work after a couple of years. In terms of being a sort of 2D generalist, like it's a bit more sort of difficult, because it's harder it's harder to be the sort of 2D equivalent of what Balázs is doing, is where your USP is that is your kind of problem solving creativity, more generally speaking. With for some reason with 2D animation, it's very much about like, what does your stuff look like? What kind of visual style do you have? Yeah.
Yeah, Chris, do you see yourself as a brand, or are you a problem solving? How do you present yourself to clients?
Yeah, I try, a bit like Balázs was saying, I try as much as possible to stay true to what I like to do, and to sort of, I think I've got a bit of a playful, a bit sort of, sometimes a bit mad kind of style. Like it's quite bold and extreme to come and find me. So if someone does, then I'll stick to that and propose them something. You know, they'll come to me with an idea, and then I'll come up with something completely different. For a music video, they'll say, "Oh, we want the band to appear in it, and it needs to be like this and like that." And I'm gonna say, "No, I'm gonna make the band in puppets and you know." And a bit like Balázs said, yes, they go for it, or no, they don't, and then we're not made for each other. And sometimes they come to me, and I don't, you know, like that Dunelm advert I did, I was like, oh, I don't really have anything planned for the next month. I could really do with a bit of money. They were very clear on what they wanted, and then I just took it because that's what it was. But generally, yeah, I think people come towards me because of what I've done before, and they'll take me for that.
Well, I sort of, you know, I saw, you know, your work a couple of years ago, I think, or a year ago, and, you know, very strong style and lots of moody lighting and dynamic, the guy going down the street, etc., etc. How far does your last piece of work resonate with clients? You know, they're looking around, and, you know, are you only as good as your last work, or would they come to you and go, I want one of those again? Or would they come to you and go, I'd like a 2D kind of motion graphics thing with some augmented reality, la 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 la?
Yeah, I think there's so much truth in that question. You can really be easily categorized by your last work, and I had the experience of people coming to me because they've seen one of my works and they essentially want the same. And as I've said, I'm really not the person to repeat myself. I hate doing the same things again and again. So that's been quite a challenge. For example, for the Odessa music video, I felt that I wasn't really telling the story I wanted to tell. So I actually had to find something else to latch onto, and where I can fall in love with the project again. Because at first I presented a story that wasn't really on brand for them. And then we went another way. It's not a story I dislike, it's just not what I initially imagined. And it's really hard to let go of that first idea that you really fall in love with. So yeah, it happens, but then again, I think it's important to try to distance yourself from your previous works and just go forward. And I think the way to solve that is just to have calls with the clients, talk them through it, and present them your ideas in a very clear and concise way. And
yeah, and
hopefully they understand.
Yeah, and do you think clients these days are more cautious, or, you know, more open to ideas than earlier, you know, in earlier years? I don't know, Tony and Chris, you've probably been around the block a bit longer than Balázs, but, you know, have you seen a change in attitudes towards ideas from clients?
I've seen a change in schedules. The schedules are much shorter and the budgets are smaller. Again, I can only speak for 2D sort of animation, but there's such a volume now. There's so many screens and there are so many channels and so many social media platforms that the schedules are shorter and the budgets have come down. So that obviously affects things. But it even affects things in I've sort of dabbled occasionally in character animation as well for series and things, and it even affects that, I think. I should say, it's worth pointing out, because I'm sounding very bitter, but the animation industry in the UK is really lovely. The sort of ground level, the animators, the producers, the directors, generally, obviously there are exceptions, but generally people are really nice, and it's a very friendly, supportive environment. And even generally the clients that you meet as well are quite friendly. It's not quite like I imagine if you work for an ad agency and doing live action is a different scenario, but with animation people tend to be, because a lot of clients and don't know much about animation. You know, they know they want it, but they're not very clued up, and so there's sometimes on the positive side there's a little bit of a sense of them trusting you, you know, but yeah, unfortunately, because there's such a volume of stuff that needs to be produced, schedules have come down, and so have budgets.
Chris, what's your reading of that? Has the client got more trusting or more adventurous over the years?
So I think there's a bit of both. There is the side where because we've got so many screens, because there's, you know, such a need for attention, they can suddenly be like, yeah, let's go bold and mad. I mean, I do my last music videos is about two neighbors killing each other, and then it's Groundhog Day, and then they live again, and then they kill each other and live again. I mean, lots of fun to do, and they went for it because, yeah, you know, it's bold, different, and it might attract a bit of attention. And so some things like that do work, but I think on the other hand side, there are still massive brands that do gigantic campaigns with, you know, 40 people having to okay it before it can even come out. And so there's a bit of everything. And then at the same time, I'm saying that those Gucci adverts where I animate on, that's stuff where, you know, obviously it's Gucci and it's meant to be, you know, super high-end and super controlled. But then at the same time, the director is coming up with all of these ideas and campaigns, and they're quite out there. And Gucci is trusting that. So I think, again, in that need for attention and need for something a bit different and interesting, there is something to be said about. Oh, I think maybe.
Yeah. That was something to be said about, and then he went silent. So
yeah, can you hear me again?
Yeah.
Oh, right, perfect. Yeah, I think I pulled on my USB cable here. But yeah, so there's both ways, I think, and it's sometimes tricky to navigate and know where to be, but then I tend to trust my guts and go for what I want to do and try that out.
Yeah, and on that sort of note of sort of trusting your guts, I've just got one last question, I think, here about sort of kind of resilience. You know, you go through periods of intense work, and then suddenly you've got nothing, and you're unsure about, you know, where the next job's going to come from. How do you deal with that sort of roller coaster, Balázs? How do you deal with that kind of, you know, that highly intense work and then nothing at all? Or maybe it doesn't happen to you.
I'm really bad at it. I'm really bad at the keeping sane part of the job. So yeah, I always joke that I'm unemployed. I mean, it's not really a joke. It's kind of the reality. So it's hard. It's hard because I think once you are in a job, it can be, you know, so many late nights or all-nighters. You are fully mentally in that something you're doing, and then bam, it's over, and you just have to switch back and try to act like a human, and that can be really, really tricky.
Thank you.
I'm trying to figure out how to change that. Maybe if budgets were higher or the schedules were a bit looser, maybe we'd have a bit more time for ourselves. So yeah, circling back to the previous question, I have the same experience. I mean, I think clients are really looking for interesting ways to approach things, but sometimes the budget is just not meeting the ambition or the schedule. And I think that is what can lead to these overnights and these crazy schedules of, you know, full-on work, then nothing.
Thanks. And I'd just like to extrapolate a bit for those people in the audience who are studying animation or are sort of budding animators. Tony, how do you cope with that roller coaster of, you know, intense work and then, you know, the plunge down to not knowing where the next job?
Well, I haven't experienced that for about 6 years, because when my wife got pregnant, I decided to just get as much work as I possibly can, and so now I work about, if you add it all together, probably about 10 months out of a year. And so that 2 months is kind of spread evenly across the year. it's not a problem. But when I can remember what it was like, and before, and I dealt with it mainly by being really complacent and playing a lot of PS4. I found myself more prolific since having so little free time suddenly, because you find that you have to. You have an evening and you realize I have to use this evening. I have to do work, personal work, artwork now, or I'm not going to get a chance. Whereas when I was doing projects like high intensity projects for like a month and then nothing for 2 months, I would spend that 2 months just dossing about, to be honest. But so the pressure of having very little free time has made me do personal work for myself. But yeah, that's how I coped with it.
And Chris, how about you? What do you do with your time off, so to speak?
So it is a bit of a mental battle. Like, it's lots of ups and downs, and then it's true at the end of a project where suddenly you're like, oh, what do I do with my day now? So this is where having the studio here is quite nice, because you don't sometimes know where the next job is going to come from. That's panicking me enough that I'm either doing those animators re-edit so I can share something fresh. I try and find companies to represent me. There's always something to be done. And then whenever none of that needs to be happening, then I make some like fun stuff here, just to keep on putting new images out there, and hopefully sort of get people interested, and there's nothing like some fresh cool looking images to sort of attract potential new projects, or so it's a bit of everything really. And trying not to go nuts.
Yeah, so you keep your batteries charged through your creativity in your sort of spare time, so to speak. Listen, everybody, we've got to go now. I just did promise Ebba's question. So in 5 words or less, could you answer this? Animation, you can still support a family, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Chris.
Yeah.
Chris, can you support a family through what you do?
Yes, I mean, I've got 2 dogs and 3 cats, but they are my family, and yeah, it works. It works.
Thank you.
We'll make it work.
And Balázs, you're not on the breadline, are you?
I don't have the experience yet.
Yeah, but you're surviving. Just to let all those budding animators out there know that there is gold in them, the hills, and you can make a living. Yeah. So look, thank you very much, everybody, and thanks London International Animation Festival for these industry panels. This is my last one today, so lovely to speak to Tony, Balázs and Chris, and look forward to seeing you again sometime, folks. So thanks very much. Cheerio.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.